name is Ben Diedrich. I'm the social media manager for Stokes Hodges Auto Group, which includes Kia of Augusta, Acura of Augusta, Honda Cars of Aiken, and now Georgia Auto Direct. Each week we bring you news and views from around the CSRA, and this week is a special week. I'm excited to introduce you and show you an interview that I did on Friday with author Brian Panowich, author of Bull Mountain. He's going to talk about how he started writing and tell you everything you need to know about his life and his writing, and his job as a firefighter at Columbia County. All kinds of really cool things, and I hope you enjoy. And now, with no further ado, the first part of my 5-part series interview with Brian Panowich. I am Ben Diedrich again, social media manager and community outreach manager for the Stokes Hodges Auto Group, and I am wicked excited to be sitting here with Brian Panowich today, author of Bull Mountain, and a couple more that are coming up. We're going to talk about those. Brian, just to begin, I know we've already talked about it, but can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you started getting started in writing?
I'm not originally from here. My dad was military, so I'm not originally from anywhere. But he retired here at Fort Gordon when I was 12, so this is home. Augusta is pretty much home. I don't know, man. I had kind of a normal childhood or whatever, but I like to read comic books. I always thought that I was going to write comic books when I grew up. I'm a mad Batman fan, always have been, and this is long before like the boom of like the comic book movie thing that's happened recently.
Like the 7 or 8
right,
different.
That I'm thrilled about, but like now my son is growing up in an age where that's like commonplace. Well, for me, when I was a kid, it was very nerdy to like comics and do that kind of thing, and I wanted to write and draw comic books. That was I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt until I realized in high school that girls weren't really like into guys that wanted to write and draw comic books. So,
back then.
Right. Like I said, my son's growing up in a different era. That's cool. But back then, not so cool. So I kind of let that idea go and started playing guitar. My father was a musician as well, and he was really into outlaw country, Waylon Jennings and that kind of thing. And so I kind of tried to follow in his footsteps. I picked up the guitar, realized that girls did like that. That worked. So
that'll do it.
I got to Georgia Southern, and I was in the journalism program over there because it was the only type of creative writing outlet that they had. There was no other degree available, and at the time, journalism wasn't a dying art. So I got involved in that, but my band actually was doing better. So my dad said, if you graduate, I'll give you 5 years to go out there and do it and try to make it happen as a musician. I'll help you, I'll support you, yada yada. That was the deal we made.
I like that.
Yeah. He's a pretty good dude, man. My old man was and I'll get to that because he's pretty much the reason I wrote this novel. And so anyway, I went out on the road and I tried to do that, and we came, that close, and then we came that close, and then we came that close, and it was always a hurry up and wait situation. And then I met my wife, and my baby girl was born, my first daughter, Talia, and that was it. I was done playing music. I was 32, and it hadn't happened yet, and I had a little girl at home now, and there was no way I was going to miss any of that. So I just hung it up. I set a guitar in the stand, and to be honest with you, I haven't touched it since.
During this time, were you writing at all?
I like to say yes, but it was a totally different thing because I was writing songs. We wrote all original music, so I was the main songwriter in the band, me and the guitar player Jason. So, and my songs have always been in the same vein as Springsteen, as far as like characters and story songs and that kind of thing. So for me, making the jump from writing songs to writing short stories was almost like just a shift in pitch. It was easy to do, for me. But it took me a while to get there, because after my daughter was born and we moved back here to Augusta, because I was living in the panhandle of Florida at the time, like right outside of Mobile Bay.
Okay.
And because it was central, like my band was blowing up down south, but I still wanted to be close to home in South Florida. So, but I still wanted to be close to home here. So we figured like central right there in the Mobile, Pensacola area would be perfect. So that's where we ended up.
Not too far away, but
Right. Well, anyway, my baby was born and I was done with music. We moved back home here because this is where my mom was, and we needed help. So
how old was she then?
my daughter,
Yeah.
she was 8 months old when I
Okay,
came
so
home. So yeah, it didn't take long for me to decide that she was more important than being out on the road with 4 guys in a van sweating. Here.
I can understand that.
And look, don't get me wrong, it was a fun life, but that life had ended. Clearly, the minute she was born. So me and my wife and my 8-month-old baby came home and moved in with my mom, and I was 31, 32, and with zero skill set. Like, had no idea what I was going to do with my life at that point. I could play guitar. I had a degree in psychology from Georgia Southern that I still don't think can get me a job.
I've heard that about that field.
So anyway, I met up with some other friends of mine that I used to play music with before I had left and taken it out on the road professionally, and 2 guys, Mike Holberton and Laddie Williams, and they were both firemen. And I was like,
For Columbia County at that point?
actually, Mike was working in Columbia County and Laddie was working in Richmond County.
Okay.
And so I kind of had to end with both sides, and I was like, well, how did you guys end up working for the fire department, man? That's crazy. And I remember Mike telling me, he said, because, man, you work for 24 hours and then you're off for 48. So it's like every time you get off in the morning, it's Friday. And I was like, that's sold. Done.
That was why.
Man, it was great. So that's I did, man. I went into Augusta Tech and got certified and got everything that I needed, man. I got my EMT license and went to work for the fire department. And
So you did all that, the schooling, before you
Yeah.
put in for the job?
yeah,
That's
I try to get everything. I want to be the guy that's most qualified for anything. Before I even walk through the door, because if I'm at the gunfight and my gun is loaded and yours ain't, I got the, you know what I'm saying, I'm gonna win it. During the first 3 or 4 years that I was there, I started feeling, gosh, man, the best way to say it is kind of resentful, because I had gone from being my own boss as far as making music and writing songs and traveling the world, well, the Southeast anyway, and but I wasn't making anything. I wasn't creating anything. I wasn't making any art. My job was important, and I was doing good things, and that was fulfilling. But man, I was lacking something. So, my wife actually, and I'll refer to her on several different occasions because she is basically, responsible for all of the good things in my life.
It's important to have a person like that in your life. I feel the same way about my wife.
It is, man. It is. And I'm blessed and lucky, and I know it. And if you get something like that, you got to hold on to it with both hands and feet. But so she was the one who recommended. She's like, well, why don't you try, just writing some stories, get back to that. Because she knew, I told her about how I enjoyed writing comics and and I still read them, and I still wanted to, I read, I ate 2 books a week at least all the time. She said, why don't you try that? So I did, man. I just started, then like I said, writing from songs to short stories was just a little shit. I started writing these 1,000-word short stories, and I've discovered something called flash fiction. Are you familiar with this, Ben?
I personally am. I don't know if people watching are, so...
Flash fiction is like bite-sized little stories that you can read, in the morning when you get up as you're drinking your coffee before you head out the door for work, or something like that. There's a lot of crime fiction, flash fiction websites out there like shotgunhoney.net and the Flash Fiction Offensive.com. These are different websites that unknown authors and some well-known authors will just contribute stories to, and then, like I said, it's like a page long, so you can read it, and if it knocks your socks off, then you're like, wow, man, how did that person write a story with so few words that has so much emotional impact? So I started reading this stuff and really getting into it, and it was almost like going to school, reading all of these guys who were writing these stories. And so on my wife's, behest, I gave it a shot. And I wrote a story and I sent it in, and a couple weeks later, and I remember it like it was yesterday, man, I was sitting in the Zaxby's with my kids, and we were having milkshakes, and I got an email on my phone saying, we're gonna run your story on such and such a date. And it was like the best thing ever. Like I was a published author. I didn't get any money. There was no like big hoorah. Nobody knew who I was. But on that Monday of that month, something I wrote was going to be on the internet. And that was a big deal for me. And I still think of that as the beginning of my career as an author.
And then,
here we go. I wrote a short story called If I Ever Get Off This Mountain. And it was nominated for an award called the Spine Tingler. And I come to find out later that was like just another guy's website, and he picked out all the stories himself, and he worked out of his basement, and he wasn't, so it wasn't a big deal. But to all these people involved, it was like, hey, cool, Brian, your story got nominated. So
these people involved,
all these people, all the other writers,
okay.
that was a big deal for this community of writers. And so I was like, oh, that's awesome. So, and I lost the award. I
were nominated.
A guy named Ken Bruin, who's an incredible Irish crime fiction writer, won the award. So if you're going to lose big. And so anyway, I lost, and that was the end of that. And I didn't really give it too much thought. But a couple of days later, I got a phone call from a guy in New York. And I've always heard that if your phone rings and that it says New York or California, you always answer. You always, because even if it's a bill collector, the chances are California and New York is always going to be good news. I don't know if that's ever true for anything else.
I'm going to have to start looking at my phone again.
Right. So I get this call from New York, and it's this guy, and he tells me he's a literary agent in New York, and he read my story online on the Spine Tingler website. And so immediately I'm thinking, okay, how does he, is he a Prince of Nigeria? Does he need money? How's this racket gonna go, right? He asked me if I'd ever thought about writing a novel, and I told him that I hadn't. And he asked me if I ever did, to give him a call, because he'd be interested in reading it. And then he said, also, when you're done, hang up the phone and Google my name.
Because I know what you're thinking.
Right, exactly. He says, and so I said, okay, and I hung up, and I looked him up right there on my phone, and his name is Nat Sobel, and he is the agent for James Elroy, for Tom Franklin, for Wiley Cash, all of these incredibly world-renowned Southern writers that I read and have books on the shelf. And I'm sorry, but I sat out in the garage for a few minutes, and I was like, oh my God, this is real. This is a real agent, and he's really interested in seeing me do this. And so I told my wife, and she's like, well, do it, do it. Well, how? Because I got 4 kids at home, and I'm Mr. Mom, and then I go to work. That's where I did it.
I want to hear about that, because I read about that online, and
well, I went to work a couple of days later after I'd gotten that phone call, and I told the guys, I said, listen, man, I got this call from this agent in New York, and he thinks that I've got some talent. He wants me to write a book. And so, we're sitting around the picnic table at headquarters. By this time, I had moved to Columbia County, so I was working in Columbia County. And I was working on an 821, and my partner and the guys at the table, let me tell you, if you bring something to that picnic table, they're either gonna love it or they're gonna hate it. But the love or the hate is gonna be really intense, man. So you gotta have thick skin,
Yeah.
I mean, it's judge, jury, executioner, man, and firemen do not hold back at all. So they said, well, what's the book gonna be about? So I laid it out for them, and I told them my idea, and they said, yeah, do it. Let's do it. So they cleared me out a closet at headquarters, one of the equipment closets.
Kind of like this.
Yeah, kind of. Except there was a lot more like stuff like everywhere, and and I had a chair in there, and I had my computer, and if something in the county wasn't on fire, that's where I was sitting in that closet writing that book every third day. In fact, if I didn't feel like it, if I just start watching TV or something, the guys at the station be like, "Hey man, don't you need to write that book yet?" Robbie or Steve would be like, "Man, you need to get to work, man. Come on, yeah, that guy's not going to be around forever." But it was pretty funny. So I had like all these people supporting and motivating me to get it done, man. And then when I came home, I didn't have to worry about writing because I had all the time to do it at work at night. And so anyway, just a year later, I finished the book. Didn't have any idea how to write one. Didn't know if it was any good. Had no idea if anybody was ever going to see it or read it. Had no aspirations to that this guy would even remember me. But anyway, back to the point is I finished the book and I sent it to the agent. Never talked to him in that entire year. No warning ahead of time that I was going to send it to him. I just sent him an email saying, "Hey, you called me a year ago. Don't know if you're going to remember me. But I wrote the book, and just let me know." And that's when my life changed, man. Because I still get kind of emotional about it because I was sitting there at work and I got a phone call. We had just come back from a fire, and we were sitting outside, and I got a phone call from New York, and so I answered it.
It's New York or California,
right? And it was his assistant, and she said, "Sit down, Mr. Sobel wants to talk to you." And so I did, and he got on the phone, and he goes, "All right, listen, I want to just tell you that this is where your life changes, because I want to take you on as a client, and I want to sell this book because I think it's one of the best I've ever read."
Wow.
This is coming from a guy that discovered Daniel Woodrell, who has been, James Elroy, LA Confidential. This guy has discovered some of the most amazing talent out there, and he was telling me that I was as good as them. And
that's amazing.
It was an incredible day. It was.
So how long was it between you hitting that send button and you getting that phone call?
Well, I tell you, it's a funny story. He told me when I hit the send button, I got an email back immediately saying, "Okay, well, if you don't hear from me in a couple of days, then you won't hear from me at all." And I was like, "Okay." Well, he was real short to the point, and I didn't hear from him in a couple of days. In fact, 2 weeks went by, I didn't hear from him, and almost a month had gone by, and I had gotten to the point where I had given up on it. I just told my wife, I was like, "Well, I guess he didn't like it," and she was like, "Well, that's okay. We'll write another one." I was like, "Okay," and I truly felt that way. Like, that's how it goes. But so when I did finally get that call, the first thing he said to me when he got on the phone was, he's like, "Do you people down in Georgia not know how to answer your email?" I said, "What?" I started scrolling through my phone because I've been checking my email like a madman, for those first couple of days after I sent him the book. And it turns out, and I still blame him to this day, and he blames me. But somehow there was some type of miscommunication, and I almost missed it because he had been trying to reach me via email for several weeks. He read my book within 3 days and was trying to get in touch with me for that entire 30 days that I was waiting for that phone call.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, I almost missed the boat just because of my lack of technical prowess when it comes to trying to work my email. But yeah, he took me out as a client, and we shot the book out, and we had 24 rejections. And I said, "Is that a lot?" And he's like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. The book was going to sell." And within 3 months of him having the novel, he sold it to the biggest publishing company in the world.
Which is?
Penguin Random House.
Yeah.
And Putnam Group is who is the imprint underneath Penguin that put my book in.
Amazing.
Because it's their crime adult fiction.
Yep.
Imprint. My editor, Sarah Minnick, was the one who acquired the book and brought it to Ivan Held, who's the president of Putnam, and they put the full force of their entire PR behind it, and between them and the Southern Independent Booksellers Association, they turned my novel into what it was, and it was massive, and it it truly changed my life. I mean, I can divide my life between before and after Nat Sopel stepped into it. Truly. I never queried an agent.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Query. Thank you.
I never sought
you
out.
didn't have to send out like 100 queries and
No.
be rejected.
I didn't even know what a query letter
He
was.
found you
Ben, right.
based on
Essentially,
flash
he
fiction.
searched me out based on a 1,000-word story that I wrote on the internet that I wasn't paid for or received, anything for. Just a brag and write story that he read, because that's how he shops for talent and writers out there. New York agents read that kind of stuff. So, I mean, put it out there. And then the book came out a year later, in July of 2015. Bull Mountain came out, and they sent me on a tour of the country to promote it. I went from here to California to New York and then back. The fire department got behind me, gave me the time off, and was my biggest fans.
which they're doing again now.
They have never stopped. Yeah. We had a book release at the Book Tavern downtown with my good friend David Hutchison, and it was the biggest night of revenue in the history of his bookstore. We came back after the tour, and after 3 weeks of all of the hype that I had seen and all of the people talking about my book being in Atlanta Magazine and being in all of these other reviews, Kirkus reviews and that kind of thing, Publishers Weekly, I assumed all the hype would be done by the time I got home. We came home, Evans Library hosted me as a guest, and we packed that place out. It must have been over 300 people in that auditorium. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. Then what they call award season started rolling around, and my book was nominated for the Townsend Book Prize here in Georgia, which is a very esteemed award, and I was honored. I didn't win it, but I was nominated. It was inducted into the books all Georgians should read by the Georgia Center of the Book, where I got to sit with Governor Nathan Deal and his wife, and I'm still like head spinning about what's going on. It topped Amazon's top 20 bestsellers of 2015. It was book of the month of that month. I was the #1 thriller of 2015 on Apple iTunes. The book was nominated for the Anthony Award, the Barry Award, and the LA Times Book Prize, which, to give you a point of reference, LA Times Book Prize for Best Debut is kind of like me, an actor going to the Academy Awards for his first role. Do you understand?
Yes.
I mean, I was in California sitting next to Don Winslow and Marcia Clark thinking, what in the heck am I doing here?